Alright, cool. Let me turn off this music real quick. Because I need to fix something because I forgot to before I start. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Now everything should be fixed. Cool. There we go. Okay. So, I come to you on this day that I have a pulled hamstring, apparently. Because all of my other muscles are good. It's just this one particular muscle right there, like on the inside of my thigh, that's like, nah, nah. I just said, forget it. So that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. Anyways, hello everyone. How are you? Um, I know I haven't been super consistent lately, and I am sorry for that. Um, I explained a little bit about what's going on in my reaction video, and yeah, it's because I've been kind of out of it lately. I haven't been sleeping. I've been dealing with migraines here and there, and migraines run in my family, so. But yeah, I don't intend to make excuses. I just haven't been very consistent. Getting fired from. Hang on, let me boost up my recording volume. There we go. Being fired from one of the most recent audiobooks I was doing kind of threw a wrench in my plans and honestly fucked me up a little. Like in kind of like it made me kind of sad. And I tried to put up a front like, it's fine. She's just being dramatic. But no, it hurt my feelings a little bit. I was gonna be honest with you. But the fact of the matter is that we're okay now. And that we are going to start reading Faraway Wanderers, and we're starting on chapter 19. And I believe I am stopping on chapter 24 today. We'll see how things go. And at the end, I might read you chapter 2 of my book. So, let me get a little situated here. We're going to turn on some music. And I am going to put on my headphones. I am going to turn down the cicadas because they're kind of like really annoying. Hello, Curtis. How are you? I think that's fine. Alright, let's go back to this cam here for our read aloud. I'm just making sure everything is in place. Let me actually adjust and make this a bit smaller because my camera is taking up a lot of space. There we go. And hello, Kushi. I believe I haven't seen you in my chat before. Hello. Alright. Just bear with me while I make sure everything is okay. Alright. Why don't y'all go ahead and tell me how the music is? Can you hear me? Cause OBS has been lying to me over the last couple of days if you haven't seen my latest video. And my Vox Machina video also has the same problem, so be prepared for that on Wednesday. Okay. Y'all let me know how the audio is, and then we can get started. Hi. I haven't seen, but I've seen all of your other videos. Oh, well thank you, Cushy. Am I pronouncing your name right? Audio is good. Okay, thank you very much. Alright, I do want to give you guys a heads up. We might have an interruption at around 3 or 4. I am finalizing plans with my family to celebrate Mother's Day. My mother will be coming to visit tomorrow, so we are making plans. I think they really just want to make sure what time the dinner reservation is, but even though I already emailed it to them, but you know how making plans with family is. It's impossible. It means happiness in Punjabi. Ooh, that's beautiful. My day has been very interesting so far. I've been editing my book ever since I woke up this morning, which was around 7:30. So I'm in the editing phases right now, and hopefully I get published soon. Fingers crossed. After this, I will probably read you guys chapter 2. But let's go ahead and get started. I have read over this chapter very briefly. I will be changing. I will be changing, Wen Cushing's voice, because it grates on the throat just a wee bit. Because dude voices can be very taxing. I think I'm pretty good at them, but you know, the last lady who fired me did not think so. She told me I sounded like a nervous teenager. I was like, oh, my pride. Anyways, yeah, let's get started. Faraway Wanderers, Chapter 19. A Night of Fire. It was impossible for Zhou Zishu to stay up past midnight, and while he was meditating in his room, suddenly there were piercing, terror-laden screams from outside. His brows knitted as he stood up and pushed open the window. He saw people running past with their clothes rumpled before receiving an assault of smoke and flame directly to his face. Fire! Fire! The frosty night was gradually clogged up with thick smoke. It seemed like the fire was not far from where he was staying, Zhou Zishu thought. Quite a big fire, judging by the smoke. But this is the Gao's manor. With the amount of people currently staying here, it can't be that hard to control it. He wanted no part of this, and closed the window since he was somewhat choked up from the smoke. An arm suddenly reached out, stopping him from closing the window. It even crudely copped a feel at the back of his hand before its owner quickly jumped inside, smiling at Zhou Zishu while slipping the window shut. Zhou Zishu judged the uninvited Wen Kexing from head to toe. He was about to say something when his nose itched, so he turned away to sneeze and firmly... I like your... Hello, Spider Duck! I like your voice. Aw, thank you, Cushy. Where was I? So he turned away to sneeze and firmly took 2 steps back, remaining a certain distance from his piece of scented pastry, who must have strolled out of a place full of beauty products just now. Mr. Good Person Wen's hair was unkempt, tied up temporarily with a plain hairband. His clothes were not exactly disheveled, but the collar was wide open, a dark red mark evident on the snow-white fabric. The nauseating scent of beauty products exuded from his sleeves, and on his wrist was a faint mark created from the scratching of nails. Completed with his lecherous expressions, it was as if he couldn't wait to show people what kind of activities he'd been doing. On instinct, Zhou Zishu fixed his own clothes and sat up straight, the feeling of moral superiority arising involuntarily. In that moment, compared to Wen Kexing, he felt like such a conscientious and upright gentleman. Reading, sorry, I'm late. No problem, fangirl. I love Zoe, not my problem, Zishu. Absolutely. That was absolutely like, whatever. I don't... let's see. Wen Kexing plopped himself down on Zhou Zishu's bed. The bedsheets had gone cold, which meant the owner of the room had been up for a while. He asked, "Stop trying to be dignified and tell me. Are you sleepless because you feel lonesome in this deep, dark night? You should have told me so that I can drag you along. Dongting, what a glorious place to be." Zhou Zishu laughed quietly and dropped his charade. He knew all too well himself that righteousness would only look proper on a righteous person, and he was the epitome of nothing was what it seemed. He looked at Wen Kexing meaningfully before replying, "Your timing is impeccable, Brother Wen. The moment you left, the fire started." He didn't get to finish the sentence as Wen Kexing's face paled, and he retorted indignantly, "Rubbish! I've been gone for hours now." Zhou Zishu was taken aback, at a loss to why he would be so angry. Then he saw Wen Kexing and looked him over. I don't know why I'm creating words. The anger receding to make way for his usual leering smile. "Are you changing tactics, Ashu? If you remove your disguise, I can show you how long it actually was." He specifically wiped his mouth after that, licking the corner of his lips as if remembering something. Zhou Zishu stared at him in a daze, mindlessly holding a cup to his mouth to pretend drinking. But, after a good while of no liquid flowing out, he finally noticed the cup was actually empty. Wen Kexing looked at him with interest and thought the other man was definitely blushing under his mask, even though he couldn't see it. He got more amused the more he thought about it and ended up bursting into a giggle. Forgive my useless self," Zhou Zishu gritted through his teeth. Wen Kexing was now fully laughing out loud. Had everyone's focus not been on the fire, the bastard would have received a beating already. Who could laugh while people's houses were burning down? Zhou Zishu felt like immoral was a word made specifically for Wen Kexing. Consequently, he stood up, tying his hair together and headed outside. He would rather face the fire than share space with this person. While the fire, whose main source was from a guest room, had largely been put out, it had shaken the entirety of the manor. Gao Chong, pale-faced and frowning, was conversing with Deng Huang. I'm gonna get that right, I swear. I don't think he was pretending to be thirsty, alright, right? Like, that's definitely a metaphor for a cold shower. Gao Xiaolan was beside them. Upon seeing him, she nodded at his direction with a sorrowful face, speaking apologetically. "My apologies, Big Brother Zhou, for your disturbed rest." She already left a good impression on him, so he smiled, replying gently, "Whose room was burning?" They were interrupted by Wen Kuxing, now carrying an outer robe, prancing out from Zhou Zishu's room. Oh, gracious. He draped the robe over Zhou Zishu's frame, then rested his chin on his shoulder, yawning lazily while smiling at Gao Xiaolan as a greeting with pretended drowsiness. Jesus Christ. Gao Xiaolan's face went red immediately as she averted her gaze. Her words came out with quickness. We heard that it was that of the Zhang younger master, but there was no harm done to him. He was talking with my father and his uncle until late night. So he stayed at a side room. The poor girl was looking every direction at once. She saw Wen Kuxing's arm around Zhou Zishu's waist, with scratch marks on one wrist, and turned with the scratch marks on the one wrist, and turned impossibly redder, mumbling, "I have to join my father now. Go take a look at Zheng Chengling." She ran with her head lowered. Oh my god, this poor girl. It's the equivalent of, like, going to a relative's room and then, like, being like, "Oh, I came at a wrong time." This is why you knock first. This is why you always knock first. Only then did Zhou Zishu seize Wen Kuxing's wrists and remove it from his body, the sound of his bones cracking perfectly, matching his current fuming expression. Wen Kuxing smiled innocently. "Why the sour face, Ashu? Don't you have a young disciple to care about?" Zhou Zishu didn't let go of the other man's wrist, even holding it in front of his face for a better look. He smiled afterwards, eyes narrowing coldly at Wen Kuxing. What kind of beauty who could have left such a pretty mark on you, Brother Wen? Wen Kuxing's eyes brightened instantly. "Are you jealous, Ashu?" "I want to devour you." After staring at him with eyes wide open, Wen Kuxing became overjoyed and smiled. "Good. Then let's go back to the bedroom. I'm gonna let you devour me as you wish. Preferably more than once." It was truly unimaginable for someone to be constantly shameless like this. With a noise of contempt, Zhou Zishu threw Wen Kuxing's own wrist back at his chest. He turned to see Zheng Chengling being surrounded with lots of people, his expression showing contemplation. Then he turned away with the intention of going back to his room. Zheng Chengling's room wouldn't catch fire for no reasons. And where did Wen Kuxing go in the middle of the night? Why did he use him to pull a clumsy act in front of Gao Xiaolan? At that moment, Wen Kuxing's soft voice asked behind him, "Ashu, in all the time I've known you, I've never seen you sleep after midnight. So, are you..." Zhou Zishu's pupils contracted. While his face didn't change, he couldn't help but stop walking, only to hear the other man continuing, "Are you so lonely that you can't rest for the whole night?" Zhou Zishu quickened his steps toward the room, as if Wen Kuxing's words were farts that he had to run away from before he choked. When... Excuse me. Give me a minute. I don't know what's stuck in my throat, but it's stuck. Also, can I just say, I hate how expensive this water is. It just happened to be $1 at the gym I was at. But then I tried to buy some at the grocery store, and it was like $3. Zhou Jishu quickened his steps toward the room, as if Wen Kuxing's words were farts that he had to run away from before he choked. Wen Kuxing smiled and stopped talking. He stood there, looking at Zhang Chengling, who had become terribly thin in just a few months. The young boy seemed to have gotten a little taller. His face ashen like that of a corpse, mouth thinned, eyes black and bright, showing bits of stubbornness and restraint. His whole body was seemingly carved from fire, burning away the old crybaby and leaving a young wolf in its stead. Only now was Wen Kuxing starting to believe that this scamp was truly a child of the Zhangs. He laughed softly, speaking at Zhang Chengling's direction without making a sound. "You better stay alert, brat." The next day, good old Wen found out that St. Zhou, who immediately holed up in his room once Zhang Chengling came near, had vanished without a trace since the early morning, his room so tidy it gave almost no indication of someone having lived in it before. Even Zhou Jishu himself wasn't sure why he started following Zhang Chengling since morning. Always anticipating the worst, he found another layer of skin-like mask to put over his already carefully crafted one. He hid in the crowd like an apparition and went past people completely unnoticed. No one paid attention to a forgettable stranger in a plain set of clothes. Zhou Jishu remained a calculated distance away from Zhang Chengling. Everyone and their mother in this grand pugilist scene proclaimed their furious indignation. And then there was that kid who stayed silent and looked over all of them, despite being the person worthy of a proclamation the most. His eyes were wide open, his face bare and honest. Zhou Jishu was suddenly reminded of someone, the person with thick brows and big eyes under the tree whom he saw in that dark, horrible cave. Liang Zhuxiao. He remembered their childhood vaguely. That brat Liang Zhuxiao called him senior brother, constantly clinging to him and making his life as inconvenient as possible while rambling to no end. Worse, he was a fool, and always slow on the uptake. Back then, Zhou Jishu was still young and impatient, so imagine his discontent and unpleasant expression when his master threw the rascal at him. He shouldn't get angry as a big brother senior, so at times he took some jabs at the kid. He seemed to be completely oblivious and wouldn't go away no matter what. Zhou Jishu ended up having to accept the situation as is. That'd be the word. It took Liang Zhuxiao. Yang. I'll get it, I promise. Liang Zhuxiao so much more effort than the normal person for things to get through to him, and he would ask questions the moment he hit a roadblock. When his big brother senior became infuriated with his inquiries, he put up with all the harsh words and waited until his brother's anger subsided to continue asking. Just like that Zhang brat. They were like sticking plasters, refusing to let go once applied on the skin. But who knew that the plaster would eventually wear off one day? Who knew that one magnificent lord of CG Holdings, leader of Tianchuang, would one day become a ghost in the middle of the crowd, staring at a kid while staring at a kid while agonizingly mourning the past. Gonna get that at one point. Oh, okay. Well, that was sad. Guess who didn't do vocal warm-ups before doing this stream? So I'm gonna sound a little bit scratchy. I apologize. You know, usually I have Sour Patch Kids with me, but I've tried, but all I have today are Sweet Tarts, and they're all the yellow ones left. Because I'm a lunatic. Yeah, Zoji Shu, it's his that was kind of like the last straw, it seems like. It's never really explicitly stated, but it very much seemed like the last straw. Also, I'm pretty sure I skipped a sentence in the previous chapter. I apologize. Alright, let me sit up a little bit. Ugh. Straighten my back. There we go. Please, I don't need hiccups right now. Chapter 20. Man in Red. The weather had no regards for the heroes gathered at Dongting, seeming how gloomy the sky was. It was as if something heavily suspended the rain in midair, and it could fall down at any time. The damp air was chilly, and there were less and less fallen leaves. There was a man standing in the middle of this with his sadness, thinking about his hometown. 30 years seemed like such a long dream. Is that a typo? Is that actually supposed to be Gao Chong? I'm gonna read that as Gao Chong for now. Gao Chong stepped down to let Abbot Simu take the reins. Zoji Shu, while hidden in the crowd, heard the young man next to him sigh. One day, I should become someone like him. Zhang Yu, the overlord of Western Chu, upon seeing Emperor Shi Huang's procession, had said, I am fit to replace him. Lu Xiu, the Emperor of Guangyu, during his younger years also dazedly lamented, Palace Guard leader is worthy of official... I'm fucking it up. Palace Guard leader is a worthy official title to strive for. Just as Yin Li Hua is a worthy maiden to wed. In his vast and obscure world, who wouldn't want to give it their all to become a legendary hero fit for the history books? The adolescent years were always full of vitality, so it wasn't uncommon for someone to look up at a figure, gritting his teeth and clenching his fist while exclaiming, one day I should become someone like him. Someone who had the world in his power. But what came after the glory? Zoji Shu's master passed away too soon, leaving the CG holdings in chaos with a lack of a leader. Just like that, the responsibility fell on his shoulders, as he is the senior big brother. But how much could a big senior brother really do? He was barely over 15 that year. The current emperor, when he was 15, was still biding his time however he could. Nanyang Wang was, when he was 15, was indulging in wine and pleasure and letting the clouds... I'm gonna get this. I'm sorry I keep fucking up. Nanyang Wang, when he was 15, was indulging in wine and pleasure and letting them cloud his senses. Even the great shaman of Xinjiang, back when he was 15, was a kid stranded in a foreign island as a hostage, full of resentfulness but had no way out. That's why Liang Juxiao, in some ways, had become his only solace, as they depended on each other to live on. But since when did the cracks in their relationship appear? Maybe it was when Liang Juxiao visited the capital for the first time and saw the corrupted struggles, saw the increasingly horrible conflicts between families, saw brothers murdering each other in cold blood, saw all the crimes, framings, even deaths of loyal officials, behind all of which was the senior big brother whom he always looked up to. Gao Cheng was already standing up, fiercely condemning the Ghost Valley in front of the heroes. Zhou Zishu's eyes were downcast, as if he was sleeping. Not a single syllable of Liang Juxiao's interrogating words had left his mind all these years. What are you all after, really? Power? The throne? Glory and wealth? Your fate will not end well if you continue down this road. Please, snap out of it! An eye for an eye is how it is, big brother. An eye for an eye? Why should blood be paid back with blood? While in this world there were other ways to make people suffer without dying. Zhou Zishu smiled mockingly and thought, Juxiao, we're both wrong after all. Oh! Oh my god! That was so sad! At that moment, there was a grunt interrupting Gao Cheng's words and Zhou Zishu's train of thought. The noise sounded like it belonged to a child, but it was also strangely raspy. There was an internal force underlying Gao Cheng's voice, so it was evident that this person was not your run-of-the-mill type, seeing as how they were able to cut him off. They spoke louder. Sir Gao, how can you come to the conclusion that the Ghost Valley's behind all this, just with mere words? Isn't this a little far-fetched? Everyone's gaze was drawn to one spot, not excluding Zhou Zishu. The one who spoke up was a dwarf-like man, who was only around a meter tall, currently sitting on the shoulder of another man whose build was the complete opposite. Zhou Zishu could be considered tall compared to the average man, but even he had to crane his neck to look at this giant. His hair was wild, and his beard was untamed, only leaving his dark eyes visible. He carried the dwarf with care, using his huge hands to grip the smaller man's legs to prevent him from falling. Weren't these the Earth Lord Feng Xiaofeng and his wishy-washy friend Gao Shanyu? You know what? I think I'm gonna make the Earth Lord sound like Peter Dinklage. Mostly because Peter Dinklage is amazing. Their physical attributes were too distinctive, to the point that everyone who knew they were. Their physical attributes were too distinctive, to the point that everyone knew who they were the moment they opened their mouths. There was a glint in Zhou Zishu's eyes. In fact, he harbored no bad feeling towards Feng Xiaofeng at all. It's Feng Xiaofeng, by the way. I need to fix that. Just pronounce that right. If the rumors were correct, he was someone with a gray morality and acted on his own emotions rather than following the rules. His physique might also be the one that contributed to his stubborn and unpredictable behaviors. Except for Gao Shanyu, Except for Gao Shanyu, to whom he was attached at the hip, he didn't listen to anyone else. In short, he was difficult. Feng Xiaofeng's voice was grating to the ears. You're being unreasonable, Master Gao. With your talk about these evildoers in the Ghost Valley, of course the ghosts of Qingzhou Ridge have done a lot of despicable things. They would be decent human beings otherwise. But forgive me for being rude, because with the Valley's strict rules for forbidding people to leave once they enter and preventing the ghosts from causing mayhem for years, I don't see why they have to act up right at this moment. Gao Chong pursed his lips, his Buddha-like face no longer smiling. His eyes were unnaturally serious, carrying indescribable intimidation. He looked at Feng Xiaofeng for a while, then asked slowly, "Is that you, Brother Feng? What is your opinion, then?" Feng Xiaofeng sneered. Spare me all your niceties. You think I don't know you're calling me brother on the outside, but dwarf on the inside? Well, this dwarf has heard something through the grapevine, and you would know, and you would like to give all your... Well, this dwarf has heard something through the grapevine, and would like to give all you jobless heroes a warning, so that you don't go and do something embarrassing. Valid point, though. Low-key. Zhou Zishu had heard enough to confirm the rumors about this man for himself. Feng Xiaofeng was definitely not the malicious type. He was neutral at worst, but people-pleasing seemed to be non-existent in his vocabulary. Not only was he unpleasant, others would label him a mad dog without a doubt. Mad dog meaning someone who knows that they are at a disadvantage just by existing. I almost feel bad for Xiaofeng. Almost. I believe in the show, he is like one of the reasons the Four Sages of Anji die. But from what I see, the Four Sages of Anji aren't in this book. I really should have done some vocal warm-ups before this. Jeez. Sorry, I blew right into the microphone. I did that without thinking. There were whispers about how he cut off someone's tongue after they called him a dwarf. He would even cut the tongue of someone who had addressed him impolitely. And when they did show him politeness, he would deem it a lie. A real tough nut to crack. Gao Chong frowned, but as a renowned hero, he had to be courteous and try not to argue with a mad dog. So, he asked in a civil manner, "What rumors have you heard, Sir Feng?" He's a bit annoying. A little bit. Feng Xiaofeng let out a cruel laugh, sounding not unlike a mystical bird. "Why are you playing dumb, Gao Chong? I may know nothing about Mu Yong and Yu Tianjie's case, but do you dare say that the deaths of Zhang Yusen and the Patriarch of Taishan have no correlations to the lapis armor?" At this, the expressions of those who were in the know changed immediately as whispers broke out. Zhou Zishu took note of Gao Chong seemingly turned to glance Abbot Simu with a grave expression. Four Sages drama only, and graded as... I figured as much. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like they would have mentioned them by now if they were actually in the story. I'm just gonna leave this water bottle open. No, you know what? I'm too paranoid. I've destroyed one keyboard. I'm not gonna destroy this one. I love this keyboard. At this, the expressions of those who were in the know changed immediately, as whispers broke out. Zhou Zishu took note of Gao Chong, seemingly turning to glance at Abbot Simu with a grave expression. In contrast, Monk Gu's young disciple, who was sitting near Gao Chong, paid no attention. his posture and attitude resembling a detached immortal. Zhang Chengling, sitting beside Zhao Jing, sneaked a look at the elder. He saw Zhao Jing's face, turned into a mix of rage, contemplation, and something else rather scary after lapis armor was uttered. The boy's impending question was stuck in his throat. In this relatively short amount of time, he had come to understand a lot of things. Zhang Chengling could see the contempt and pity in people's eyes and read it in their words. That's right. How could the infamous Sir Jiang Yusen have such a coward for a son? He once heard Zhao's servants gossiping in secret about whether it was worth it for hundreds of people to lay down their lives just for a kid. With him being incompetent in every aspect, how could they expect him to avenge Sir Jiang and rebuild the Jiang family? They only saw him as a mascot to express their hatred for Ghost Valley. Then, they would turn to him and say, "Ah, the Jiang orphan. Don't worry, kid. We will seek justice for your father and family." A helpless, pitiful mascot. Zhang Chengling's thoughts strayed to the sickly and quiet man he met in the abandoned shrine that day. Ever since that horrific night, he could never sleep without encountering nightmares. But who would care if he told them? Even Uncle Xiao would tell him to straighten his spine and stop it from getting to him. That everyone would stand beside him to avenge the Zhangs. There was no one else who would embrace his shoulders and talk to him softly. "It's all right. Sleep if you want. I'll wake you if there's a nightmare." Seeing the chaos had broken out, Feng Zhaofeng's smirk remained as he requested that Gao Chong gave everyone an explanation about the lapis armor. Zhang Chengling lowered his head, and he was kneading his temples. When there was a steady rush of wind flew at him, carrying a tiny ball of paper to hit his palm directly. Zhang Chengling startled, and after seeing that no one was noticing him, he bent down and picked up the paper ball. Written on it was simply, "Follow me if you want to know the truth." When Zhang Chengling looked up, in the crowd there was a man in dark clothes who was staring at him without blinking. I kind of read the stages as a polycule. I think the production only did that, like they said before, to be like, hey, not gay, when everybody knows it's gay. Western shows did something very similar in the 90s. Specifically when it came to black sitcoms. Joke's on you, censorship. We interpret it as more queer. Exactly. Alright. Let's see. When Zhang Chengling looked up, in the crowd there was a man in dark clothes who was staring at him without blinking. A cruel sneer seemed to be hung at the corner of his lips, his gaze dark and disdainful, as if he was sure the boy wouldn't follow him. In a blink of an eye, not sure if it was out of being over-emotional or impulsive, Zhang Chengling gripped the note tightly. Taking advantage of the current commotion, he quietly left Zhao Jing's side and followed the strange man through the crowd. No one noticed him, except for Zhou Zishu. Zhou Zishu always had half of his attention on Zhang Chengling, and his keen eyes immediately noticed alarming him of the man shooting the note at the boy. Seeing Zhang Chengling discard all notions of danger and went after the man alone, He frowned and immediately abandoned the hero's quarrel to chase after the boy in secret. The man seemed to be toying with him, disappearing as soon as Zhang Chengling followed him, and not long after that. There would be small rocks shooting at him from different directions, apparently mocking his extremely terrible Qinggong like a cat playing with a mouse. Zhang Chengling gritted his teeth, unconsciously able to pursue further and further. He didn't have an aptitude for these physical activities. Oh, gracious. Let me check the weather real quick. Because it looks like it's about to storm a second time. And I don't want to lose power. Okay, it says it's not going to rain again, but that's a pretty thick storm cloud. And the wind is blowing awful hard. And after he arrived at Zhao's holdings, everyone was too busy about doing heroic deeds to remember to teach him more kung fu. Soon enough, his angry chase left him out of breath and dizzy. He could almost hear the sound of his pulse by the temples. Never before had the spoiled boy been so angry with himself. He heard someone snort, "This is Zhang Yusen's brat? What a waste." He thought, "That's right. You're a waste, Zhang Chengling. Why did Uncle Li risk his life to save you? Why did it have to be you? Get this child some therapy." The man then appeared in front of him, hands like claws twisting his neck. His gaze at Zhang Chengling was sinister. When the boy's body warmth slowly started to disintegrate, he realized they were standing on a deserted land. Shadows appeared seemingly from nowhere, behind the man with the same fashion, circling around Zhang Chengling. The one who led him here laughed quietly and released him. He raised his voice. "My poorly hidden friend, why must you be so worked up over a boy like this?" A man dressed in deep red stepped forward at that. On his face was a red birthmark, making his features incredibly formidable at first glance. Zhang Chengling's legs started to tremble, but he tried his best to keep his chin up and feigned courage at the man in red. The man suddenly laughed, the dry sound not unlike that from a dusty fan, causing goosebumps to erupt across the skin. In just a blink, he materialized in front of Zhang Chengling and held the boy's neck. His fingers were cold like a corpse's, and for a brief moment, Zhang Chengling mistook him for an undead. Then the man asked softly, "Let me ask you, that night at Zhang's holdings, did you see a man with a missing finger?" Zhang Chengling's eyes were wide as saucers as he tried to shake his head. The man's narrowed eyes, softening his voice even more. "No. Think again, my good boy. Did you see him, or did you not?" The softer his voice was, the stronger his grip became. Zhang Chengling tried to breathe and struggle out of his grip with all of his might, his face reddening, but all of his retaliating punches were futile. He rasped, "Fuck you!" The man in red seemed not to notice, a demonic smile appearing on his face. "Yes or no?" Zhang Chengling felt like his chest was going to burst. He knew this man wanted him to say yes, but right at this life and death moment, his stubbornness awoke with a vengeance, and he spit on the man's face. The grip quickly turned crueler, and Zhang Chengling had no more strength to struggle. The man's voice was still gentle. "I'm going to ask you once again. Yes or no?" Zhang Chengling was slipping out of consciousness. He thought, "This is it." Suddenly, the man let out a sound of pain and let go of the boy. The air rushed into his lungs and he stumbled backwards, eventually falling on the ground with a thud, coughing painfully. The man in red took a few steps back, eyes glancing at the rock that almost broke his wrist with hostility. "Who's there?" Okay. Awkward. I didn't realize this stopped at chapter 21. It doesn't stop at chapter 21. The link is just broken. Cool. Okay. Cool. Yeah, especially for these first couple chapters, being Chengling is suffering. I mean, that can be said for a lot of characters in wuxia. I need to learn to take deep breaths when I do this. Because what happens is, basically when you don't breathe for a while, talking for a long time is kind of like holding your breath for a really long time. And if you just sort of blaze through it, eventually you will run out of breath and you'll start getting dizzy like you do when you hold your breath for a really long time. Also, I have a really bad habit, especially when I get back from the gym, of slouching like this. So it's better to sit up and open your chest and speak with your diaphragm, which I'm trying to do right now and being very unsuccessful at it. Or I could talk the way I do in my writing video, where I talked very softly. I'm just not a very soft kind of person. I don't talk like this in real life. I'm very loud, naturally. Mostly because I live in a family full of extroverts, except for my dad. I'm gonna be really mad if I have the hiccups. That felt like a hiccup. Chapter 21. Poisonous Scorpion. Out of the corner walked a gaunt man with an easily forgettable face that served no indication of his age. No one had any idea of how long he had been standing there, having been unable to detect his presence at all. The man in red, I slouch all the time, and a lot of writing on the computer and drawing. Yes. Actually, when I'm exercising, what I do is I grip on to the handles on the treadmill and I lean back, and that usually keeps my back pretty straight. I'm getting better at drawing these days. Maybe I should show you guys my drawings one day. I'm not very good, but I am getting better. The man in red frowned. He had no idea why, but when he looked at this plain man with nothing striking about him, there was a shuddering feeling that crawled up his spine and raised the hair on the back of his neck. He couldn't help but change his posture the closer the other man got, unblinking eyes never leaving him. He asked again, cautiously, "Who are you?" On instinct, Zhou Zishu was about to tell him, "Just a nobody," like he did to Guxiang, but when he looked down and saw the bruise on Zhang Chengling's neck, he thought, "I've played pretend in the palace for over half my life. Why do I have to be polite to these amateurs?" The vagabond's uncouth behaviors in him had been repressed for way too long. He cast a cursory glance at the man, including the man in red, who had all become tenser, and laughed. "What makes you think I have to answer you?" The man's eye twitched. Hands retracted under his sleeves. Apart from his birthmark, whose color seems to have become a darker shade of red, were anyone to see his hands at that moment, they would discover a layer of black smoke appearing over the skin. The men beside him involuntarily spread out. After signaling each other with their eyes, they formed a circle around Zhou Zishu and Zhang Chengling. Zhou Zishu paid no attention to them, bending down to pull Zhang Chengling's collar and picking him up off the ground. "Stand up, kid. Don't lower your head like that." Zhang Chengling stared at him blankly, still confused since Zhou Zishu was wearing an additional layer of disguise. The man in red was patient still. "We just want to ask the child something, my friend. Don't stick your nose in other people's business," is what he was about to continue with, but was unable to, because Zhou Zishu had already set about with electric speed. He gripped the back of the one who lured Zhang Chengling here, and in the exact same way the man in red did to the young boy. Oh my god, so many descriptors. The man spluttered, frightened. His martial arts skills were not at all incompetent, but this malnourished-looking man moved in a way that was almost ghost-like, and his most vulnerable body part was at the man's mercy before he even had a chance to evade. Even a new martial arts practitioner would know that the neck and chest are the most vulnerable parts of the body, and had to be looked out for with the utmost vigilance. Those are the places that one would protect unconsciously. A woman? Where did I get woman from? A person who dared aim for another's neck was either very unseasoned or very confident in their ability. Zhou Zishu's lips curled without a single hint of real mirth. "Am I your grandpa?" The man in his grip was initially startled, then enraged. He started to yell without taking his current situation into account. "You—" But that was all he could utter, as Zhou Zishu strengthened his hold and turned his vulgar words into hoarse cries. During the panic, he lifted his arm to hit Zhou Zishu's chest, but it was dislocated before he could see the man make a move. There was only a wretched, distorting scream heard between them. Zhou Zishu drawled, "Answer me. Am I your grandpa?" The man in red asked angrily, "What do you want?" Zhou Zishu turned his attention to him and smiled cruelly. "Just some trivial matters that need this bastard's cooperation. Don't poke your nose in other people's business." Veins throbbed on the back of his palm, and the man convulsed a little before turning with his eyes rolled back, not even a scream being let out. It was unclear whether he was dead or not. Zhou Zishu loosened his grip, and the man slid to the ground, almost boneless. At the same time, two more charged them, one targeting the barely managing to stand firmly Zhang Chengling, one targeting Zhou Zishu with a hook in his hand that smelled of rotten meat. He didn't bother to dodge, and instead kicked the attacker square in the chest at a mind-boggling angle. The strength from that kick made the man spit out blood while he flew backwards to conveniently hit Chengling's sneak attacker, causing them both to fall like bottle gourds. There we go. Zhou Zishu frowned, picking Zhang Chengling up by the neck with distaste. He threw the boy aside like a small kitten and said impatiently, "Wait here, you little nuisance, and don't move." Zhang Chengli felt his body was light as a feather as he was picked up and thrown. His eyes widened for a brief second, and he mouthed silently, "Shifu." Other men continue attacking Zhou Zishu, while the man in red remained still. Zhang Chengling didn't even dare to blink at the sight in front of him. Excuse me. He remembered his father's words back when he was little, that martial arts had many different paths and styles to pursue, some steady and unflinching, some incredibly sharp and impenetrable, some fast, and rushed like a storm. But all of those above involved visible techniques, and the most magnificent one would have to be when one couldn't see, sense, or hear it. Completely indescribable and featureless, like the rain in spring at first glance. He summed it up as quick like startled birds, making light work of the most burdensome. At that moment, he finally understood what it was like to be making light work of the most burdensome. Each of those men carried an identical hook that looked like a scorpion's tail. My definition of getting better at drawing is able to draw straight stick figures. Same. That looked like a scorpion's tail when one examined closely. The hooks were glowing faint blue and carried a demonic aura. Zhang Chengling had yet to know that these people were the infamous Poisonous Scorpion Band, specializing in murder and thievery. They would do any disgusting and despicable things imaginable for money. However, right now they were a complete mess. Zhou Zishu seemed to be barely moving around, his gait almost too lazy. He was empty-handed, and his body moved in such a flexible way that made him look completely devoid of bones. But none of the attackers could land a finger on his clothes. Only when he touched them did they realize how truly dangerous he was. After a while, Zhang Chengling's head spun with dizziness. Just under an hour, 13 scorpions were knocked out. Zhang Chengling was incredibly invigorated at this sight. His fists clenched tightly. Zhou Zishu dusted off his robes, standing opposite the man in red, and examining him for a good while. He tilted his head, his eyes narrowed. With that birthmark on your face and that famous demon hand, you surely must be a messenger of bad luck, Sun Ding, the delighted morning ghost. The man's expression shifted. Zhou Zishu smiled coldly. Ghost Valley has its rules and regulations. Once you've become a ghost, you cannot leave except for certain times. What nerve you have to come to Dongting and attack someone in plain sight? The man in red spoke through clenched teeth. You talk too much. He became a flurry of red that exuded a smell that was a combination of the smell of fish and rotting corpses. Bro, wear some deodorant, my guy. His charge attack barely visible to the eye. Zhou Zishu immediately flew back a few feet. The man didn't land a hit, but Zhang Chengli could see very clearly, on the ground where Zhou Zishu was standing a few minutes ago, was a dark was a deep mark in the shape of a hand, and the fluttering blades of grass around it all withered at an incredible speed. The boy looked up in astonishment. So this man really was Sun Ding, the delighted morning ghost, Mu Yung and Feng Buzui's murderer. Zhou Zishu broke I need to slow down, because I keep fucking up. Zoji Shu broke a branch in passing, and with a shout, pierced it into the space between the ghost's hands. The branch quickly shriveled up, but Zoji Shu, still expressionless, pressed further. There seemed to be an influx of vitality poured into the branch, making it more flexible. The delighted morning ghost felt like it was almost a living being and carried an adherent force. Alarmed, he took a few steps backwards, but Zoji Shu's pressure had almost reached his abdomen. He struggled to tumble away and regain his footing, face ghastly pale. Zoji Shu threw the branch aside when the deadly energy was about to spread to his hand. He fixed his sleeves and stood there grimly. The ghost, in a show of exceptional pragmatism, immediately disappeared without hesitation once he touched the ground. Zheng Chengling shouted, "He's trying to run!" Zoji Shu looked at him, then turned away uncaringly. Zheng Chengling rushed to him and cried, "Shifu!" Zoji Shu halted, brows knitted. "Who's your Shifu?" Zheng Chengling followed him regardless, tugging at his arms and looking up at him. "I just know that's you. Uncle Zo who saved my life. Fuck me, dude. My Shifu." Who else would speak in this mildly irritated voice while talking to him? Who else would have these bony but warm hands? Who else would have this strange, ghost-like style of fighting? Who else in that crowd would follow him here and rescue him? Chengling, honey, those don't sound like compliments, baby. Maybe work on that. Zheng Chengling was unflinching in his judgment. Zoji Shu wasn't expecting to trick people for long anyway, but he was still disappointed that the brat saw through him. He tried to get rid of his tail in the most tactful way possible. His eyes suddenly turned cold before he could finish the sentence, one hand tugging Zheng Chengling closer to his chest and body quickly moving aside. Zheng Chengling had no time to react. He could only feel a rush of wind brushing them and the arms holding him stiffening. Zoji Shu's voice was icy. "Death-seeking bastard." The attacker's neck was broken in one movement before he even had the chance to jump at them. When Zheng Chengling took a closer look, he saw that this man was the first one Zoji Shu knocked out. Who could have imagined that he was only faking his death earlier? The boy was thrown aside once more. Zoji Shu walked away without a word. But there was no way Zheng Chengling was going to let him leave again, so he followed the man unabashedly. However, he quickly grew dizzy as the man was nowhere to be seen. Zheng Chengling knew that it would take decades for him to catch up with the elder's Qinggong skills. He was on the verge of tearing up, miserably calling after him, "Shifu!" At that moment, he heard a faint laugh. A man dressed in gray appeared from thin air, stopping Zoji Shu in his tracks. A man dressed in gray appeared from thin air, stopping Zoji Shu in his track and wrapping his arm around Zoji Shu's waist in a clearly calculated fashion. Zoji Shu had no idea why his body was stopped in midair before he could realize he was already in the other man's embrace. Then he heard the familiar, most annoying voice on earth. "Where's the rush, my Saint Master Zhou?" When they touched the ground, Zoji Shu cried out and clutched his right arm. Wen Kexing removed his sleeve without a second thought, intentionally tearing it at a certain angle. Then he immediately frowned. There were 2 tiny wounds on Zozishu's arm, like he was bitten by insects. No wonder why you ran so quickly. Turns out the scorpion did bite you. Zheng Chengling had a sudden revelation. He looked back at their now dead attacker. Face turning white. When Kushing stopped Zozishu from talking and made quick work blocking the flow between his meridians. Shut up. He took out a magnet and carefully removed the 2 hair-thin needles. That fucking hurts, by the way. They make that shit seem so easy. Anyway, let me finish up this paragraph. 2 hair-thin needles buried in the other's skin. Then he bent down, putting his mouth to the wound and extract the poison from Zozishu's blood without a care. As soon as that happened, Zozishu became stiff as a board. Oh, my neck hurts. Okay, so that fucking hurts, by the way. Having to get something out of yourself with a magnet or some sort of implement. There are all these action shows and all these martial arts movies that make it look so fucking easy, but it is, in fact, incredibly difficult and incredibly painful. Because more often than not, they eventually have to go in there with a needle and dig it out. I have had to deal with a lot of splinters in my life. And some of those splinters were from metal filaments that I then had to get a tetanus shot for. Ugh. Whew, I'm gonna take a bit of a break here, because... A tip to distinguish them in fan works. You know what's funny? You know what's funny? I actually haven't finished watching this with my boyfriend. Like, I've been meaning to, but we've been trying to finish Bleach. And we started sometime in, like, the winter? We started sometime in, like, I think, like, January 15th. Could be tortured and barely flinch. I mean, yeah. I mean, he does so twice, I believe. But, my boyfriend and I are trying to finish, Bleach before the new season comes out. And we are way behind. We just got on the, new Captain Shusuke Amagai. The Shusuke Amagai arc. Yesterday. So, I don't think I'll be watching Word of Honor with him specifically anytime soon. Because after that, we need to finish Hunter x Hunter. Alright, you know what? I am going to take this brief moment to use the restroom. So, I will be... Oh my god. There we go. I was trying to get that to work and it wasn't working. Trying to get the taking a break sign to move. It's not gonna move. Okay. It's gonna be very light. Sorry about that. Alright, I'm going to use... Those are big commitments, right? I'm gonna use the bathroom real quick. I'll be back in a second. I've had a lot of water. Maybe take a break in between. Uh, yeah, I really love Hunter x Hunter myself. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm actually wearing a Corona shirt. I don't know if you guys can see that. And I also have a Yu Yu Hakusho blanket hanging off of my, I have a Yu Yu Hakusho blanket hanging off of my couch right now. More than half a year. Wow. Yeah, like, my boyfriend and I are watching pretty much every Wednesday, and I don't think we're gonna make it at this rate. We haven't even, like, I fully expected to be, like, past the Captain Amagai arc. We are not. Okay. Or this chapter 22? Oh! I only have 2 chapters left. I didn't realize that. Because I read 19, 20... Oh, no, okay. I don't. 20, 21... Okay, yeah, I got 3 more chapters. Sorry. Yeah, we're gonna have to double up on 1 week. Like, there's gonna have to be a weekend where we devote to, like, only watching Bleach. Because that's when my boyfriend and I usually hang out, is during the weekends, because even though I'm self-employed, I work from pretty much the moment I get back from the gym. So, my day usually goes is, I'm usually at the gym at, like, 7:45, 8 o'clock. I leave the gym at around 9:30, and I come back home, I eat breakfast, and usually I'm at work from about, like, 10:30 until about 6:30. So, yeah, there is gonna have to be one day where we just devote to just watching Bleach. And it's gonna drive him insane. I know it is. Oh, that poor man. He puts up with me so much. Okay. So, let's see. Let's get around to get it. Oh, wait. Let me remove taking a break. There we go. Chapter 20. Ooh, I wonder, should I read this in my AI demo voice? Should I read this in my AI demo voice? You guys have probably heard this voice before if you work in food service, or if you have an automated time card machine. Chapter 22, The Divine. Wen Kexing methodically sucked out all of the poison in Zoji Shu's arm and treated his wounds skillfully. He removed the other man's meridian blocking and took out a small medicine bottle. He swallowed 1 pill and put 1 more in his palm, holding it near Zoji Shu's mouth while snickering, voice drawn out obscenely. Come on, Ashu. Open your mouth. I'm not gonna read it like that. That voice actually is not good for reading things out loud like that. But yeah, if you've ever heard your time card being read out to you recently, that might be my voice. Zoji Shu stared back with a sullen face. Wen Kexing, wholly energized as he was, kept on his blinding smile. The other man's stare could be a drill, and it would not be enough to pierce through his thick face. He took a meaningful look at Zhang Chengling and deliberately lowered his voice. We've already kissed and seen everything there is of each other. Why are you still so shy? Zoji Shu took the pill and left without looking back. Wen Kexing then signaled that Wen Kexing then signaled Zhang Chengling, who was still standing there dumbly. He said, evidently in good spirits, Seeing your Shifu isn't running, this sure is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for you to follow him. What are you waiting for?" The sky had turned dark. The scorpions had lured Zhang Chengling from Dongting's gathering to way over here. And now he had no idea how far he was, causing him to become extremely disoriented. After a while, Zozishu returned carrying a few big hares, and he went on to make food for the other two quietly. Wen Kexing said to Zhang Chengling smilingly, "Do you know what the second most adorable type of people are?" Zhang Chengling stared up at him. It made sense since Shifu was injured, but still, this man could easily rein him in without breaking a sweat. That really said enough about his ability. Furthermore, he didn't seem to be right in the head, so this boy was even more intimidated. He shook his head. Wen Kexing continued, "It's the type who's hard on the outside, but soft on the inside." "Then, do you know who the most adorable type is?" Zozishu, currently disemboweling hares with great skill, glanced at Wen Kexing coldly. "Stop spouting nonsense and go find some wood." Wen Kexing happily complied, but when he turned away, he still saw Zhang Chengling staring perplexedly out of the corner of his eyes. Thinking the boy was being curious, he explained in a haughty fashion, That type who in addition would have an incredible body to match." Zozishu spoke up casually. "Don't listen to him boasting rubbish, kid." Zhang Chengling's uncertain gaze turned to Zozishu. Did he understand this wrong? But clearly this man said. Zozishu continued, "Distance yourself from him, lest he take an interest in you." Wen Kexing tripped out on withered leaves and turned his head around, speaking as if he was hurt. "You've wronged me, Ashu." Zozishu pointed at the dead hares. "If you don't get some wood right now, I'm going to open you up like I did with these little friends." Wen Kexing startled, running away while protecting his stomach like a skittish rabbit. Zozishu found a creek to wash his hands, awkwardly wrapping the torn part of his sleeves back around his arm. The sensation of Wen Kexing's lips lingered. He was acutely aware that this man went as far as slightly licking the wound after he was done, causing his temple to throb. That move was clearly intentional. Zozishu tore away the mask on his face spitefully, and threw it in the water. This was the first time in his entire life did he come to know of such a bizarre man, who was so ravenous for another man's touch that he would gladly accept anyone within the vicinity, who let no chance of public flaunting his sexual appetite slide. When he turned his face sideways, Zhang Chengling recognized the familiar visage and happily shouted, "Shifu!" as if he had only now just known it was him. He fussed around the elder like a puppy, but still kept a certain distance, out of caution. Zozishu saw it out of the corner of his eyes and caved in, flicking his hand. "Come here." Zhang Chengling went to him and animatedly spoke in a sweet voice. "Shifu." Oh, he's so cute. Oh my god. Like, it's adorable. After contemplation, Zozishu said, "At your speed, we won't be able to make it back tonight. So let's sleep out here and I'll return you to Shou Xiao in the morning. Zhang Chunling's eyes instantly dimmed. He said nothing, only staring at his shoes instead in dejected silence. Zhou Zishu's easily persuaded soul couldn't stand this look from the boy, so he coughed and frowned. What are you doing? Zhang Chunling, head still down, answered quietly, Okay. The boy went silent once more, seeking glances at Zhou Zishu. He turned away once caught, mouth quivering, eyes blinking, a single tear clinging onto his eyelashes. Zhou Zishu leaned onto a tree and sat down. He had no idea how to treat this kid right. Did he end up like this because Zhang Yusen raised him like how he would a daughter? Since maybe he was fated to be unable to have one? As a result, he grimaced in faked irritation. Stand up and raise your head! That is a lot of wind. My god. I'm almost low-key afraid that this tree is gonna fall on my balcony. I know, the poor baby! He tries so hard. I have a call from Scam Likely. That bitch. Zhang Chunling started. His back straightened immediately. The moment he raised his head, tears rolled down his face like a dam burst open. Zhou Zishu got even more worried. His voice unknowingly softened. Wipe your face and man up. Why does this make you cry anyway? Zhang Chunling wiped his face with much effort and got even more sullen because he couldn't get his face entirely cleaned. That seemed like the last straw when he spoke between broken sobs. Shifu, I don't cry all the time. It's just I saw you and felt really sad. Zhou Zishu felt a terrible headache coming up, so he averted his gaze with an indifferent expression, no longer keen on facing the kid. Wen Kexing returned with wood to this exact moment and was slightly stunned. The sky had turned completely dark. The sunlight was gradually appearing from the horizon, leaving the western sky a glooming gray ash shade. The evening star was hung up on a tree branch, and the wind began to pick up, spreading the feeling of coolness. Wen Kexing silently sharpened the wood and made a fire, putting up the hairs that were carefully prepared by Zhou Zishu and roasting it patiently. Then he started to hum an unfamiliar tune that somewhat resembled 18 Touches, and completely suited his manners. 18 Touches, which is basically Genuine. Pony by Genuine. Zhou Zishu sat behind him wordlessly, one leg bent and hands on his knees. Zhang Chunling sat next to them, trying his best to hold in his sobbings. After a good while, the smell of meat started floating in the air, and Zhang Chunling's rumbled loudly, causing him to blush. Wen Kexing looked at him and smiled. Gotta wait a bit more. It's not fully cooked yet. Zhang Chunling nodded endearingly. Wen Kexing felt like he was even more well-behaved than a little rabbit. So, he turned to Zhou Zishu. Oh dear, hear me out. If he wants to accompany you so bad, why don't you let him? Why repeatedly come to his rescue if you want him out of your sight? Zhou Zishu slowly stood up and put his hands near the fire as the acupuncture points on his chest were starting to hurt, making him dread the chillness. Wen Kexing kicked him with the tip of his shoes. "I'm asking you here." "I rescue him because I like to," Zhou Zishu answered, still sluggish. Zheng Chengling suddenly spoke up, his voice hoarse and trembling a little. "Actually, you don't have to, Shifu. I only bring troubles. There are so many people who want to kill me. I'm not skillful at anything, and even led them to hurt you." Wen Kexing comforted him. "Don't worry, his skin is the thickest out there. Don't worry, his skin is the thickest out there. Don't you look at me like that. Normal people only have a single layer of skin. Unlike you, who's like a whole rice cake, as if one wasn't enough." Okay, I'm gonna be honest, Zishu deserved that. At Zheng Chengling's astonished face, Wen Kexing continued his explanation impatiently. Okay. "Look at his arms. Do you see the color from his skin? Look at his arms. Do you see how the color of his skin from his wrist is completely different from his wrist up? Your Shifu can't lie to save his life, but he's still not willing to reveal himself to me even now." Zhou Zishu ignored him and tore a part of the hare's legs to savor leisurely. When he was about to tear another, Wen Kexing flinched with distaste. "It's not done roasting yet. Are you a hungry ghost?" Not only when Zhou Zishu had swallowed the meat did he turn to Wen Kexing. "Were you a woman in your past life? Why do you smell of beauty products all the time? And regardless of those handkerchiefs you have, stop with that motor mouth that's full of gibberish." Wen Kexing shut up instantly. A few minutes later, the hares were roasted beautifully with glistening golden skin, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It's very difficult to do that with a rabbit, for reasons I'll expand upon in a minute. Zhou Zishu called Zheng Chengling to join them, and 2 men plus 1 kid dove in completely unceremoniously, since they were all ravenous after a whole day. Soon enough, there were only clean bones left. Now full, the 3 sat around the fire for warmth. Zhou Zishu leaned back and closed his eyes to rest, while Wen Kexing said to Zheng Chengling, "Why is your kung fu so bad? Didn't your father teach you anything?" Zheng Chengling mumbled, "He did. I'm just too stupid and lazy, so I already forgot most of them." Wen Kexing replied after some thoughts, head shaking, "When I was little, my father taught me things. I was lazy too, but I'm not really stupid." Zhou Zishu couldn't help but scoff, his eyes closed. Wen Kexing ignored him, judging Zheng Chengling head to toe, and then said casually, "Do you want to learn something?" Zheng Chengling's head snapped up, looking at the man with shining eyes. The passion in his gaze turned Wen Kexing dazed with surprise. It had been a while since he saw such honesty, perseverance, and reckless desire in someone. "You, kid, why did you suddenly turn into a wolf just now?" Zheng Chengling abruptly knelt. "Sir, please teach me. I'll do anything for you." Wen Kexing rubbed his nose and cleared his throat. "Look at you. I'm not interested in the younglings." A cough. The fire cast shades of red on the young boy's face, coating his still slightly childish features with determination, then vulnerability and imploration. Being stared at intensely like that, Wen Kexing reacted the same way as Zhou Zishu, which was turning his gaze slightly away uneasily. After some hesitation, he sighed and stood up, dusting himself off and picking up a moderate wooden stick. "All right, I'm gonna teach you some moves. Watch carefully. I won't do them twice." To his promise, he demonstrated very thoroughly, Zheng Chengling didn't miss one thing, and started practicing on his own afterwards. He wasn't a bright kid, and while Wen Kexing said he wouldn't repeat, he found himself correcting the boy and explaining to him in details. Zheng Chengling looked at him with his eyes bright, the excitement making his voice tremble. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir," he repeated. Wen Kexing, evidently having never received that much gratitude, started revealing a rare, cautious side of himself. They continued past midnight, but Zheng Chengling seemed to show no signs of fatigue, still practicing vigorously. Wen Kexing sat to one side in silence. His smiling expression vanished. He appeared to be deep in thought. Suddenly, he heard the gentle voice of the seemingly asleep Zhou Zishu. "Your last name is Wen. Who was the divine Wen Ryu to you?" Wen Kexing's whole body seemed to jolt. After a while, he lowered his head. "He was my father." Zhou Zishu, eyes now wide open, stared at his profile. He spoke again with a much more serious tone. "I've always heard of and respected the divine senior Wen Ryu. Woof, that is difficult. Ryu with his sword and dazzling fall, who traveled with his wife and genius physician Gu Miao Miao to help those in need, and later retired to a reclusive life. My apologies for having never realized that you're his progeny." Whew. Okay, so this conclusion comes around much earlier, I see. So this is what makes, so I bet you this is what makes Zhou Zishu show his face. Eventually. So, hey, at least there's not gonna be a lot of, yeah, oh god, I don't know what to do with sincerity. The one way to always catch a liar in the act is literally just to be honest. Because a liar expects you to lie to catch up with them. But what they don't expect is you to be honest. And I mean like deadpannedly honest. Like you just have to be like, yeah, because if you get worked up, they'll use that against you too. I was a theater kid. That's how I know that. Hang on, I have received a text message. It is demanded. There are people asking me. There are people asking me to send the email for the dinner reservation for tomorrow. Hey, Anonym! Been a hot minute. What's up? I'll be around, but I'll watch the rest tomorrow. Okay. Just be safe wherever you go. World's dangerous. Be safe. I would venture to say that Zhou Zishu and Wen Kexing haven't encountered any modicum of sincerity since they got separated. That's probably... I would say that they haven't experienced any sort of sincerity from anyone except for maybe the people that raised them since they were separated. Alright. Need someone like Jinling in their life. Yeah. Yeah. Or Guxiang. Guxiang also works. She's also very honest. Just very rude. Okay. Chapter 23. Old Tales. Wen Kexing's smile seemed to be hiding unspeakable sadness. I'm surprised there's still someone who can recognize his swordsmanship. Zhou Zishu felt silent. Not even Tian Chuang was entirely infallible. It had been the case when he wouldn't be able to escape in the first place. If it had been the case, then he wouldn't be able to escape in the first place. There we go, I understand that sentence now. Though it was 20 years ago, when the swordsman of the Dazing Fall secluded himself from the world, so no one really knew what happened with him and his wife since then. He quietly studied Wen Kexing. The other man was sitting by the fire, back curved. He was supervising Zheng Chengling's clumsy execution of what he was taught by his father long ago, with a still, distant gaze. His aura exuded indifference and detachment, somewhat similar to how Wen Ryuyu's manner used to be in Zhou Zishu's imagination. Then Wen Kexing began to sing. There was millet dripping with the heeds. Then there was new sacrificial millet spouting. I moved about idly in heart in turmoil. Those who knew me spoke of my sorrows, and those who did not said I was seeking something. O distant and azure heaven, by whom was this caused? There was millet with drooping heads. Then there was new sacrificial millet sprouting. If I recall correctly, and y'all need to help me with this, that is honestly a song that is similar to Home Upon the Range. Or at least the song Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. Because it's basically talking about, like, I'm sad and I've got really nowhere to call home. If I recall correctly. You guys might need to help me on that. His voice was pitched incredibly low, and was a little hoarse. A little morose. It carried a sense of disarray with the mixed-up words, each phrase and sentence sounding like it was rumbling deep in his chest and stuck in his throat, refusing to come out. The fire crackled. Zheng Chengling turned to them to ask for instructions, as he was confused about this one move. But his steps halted at the nearby singing. Back when King Pingzhou ruled over the country, and having no more moved to residence, legend had it that when the physician Chu passed by Zhangzhou, the crumbling shrines and palace brought sadness to his face, seeing the ground overran with seeds and millet. He thought up this sad melody. He mourned the buried halcyon days, and for the past that was no longer reachable. Zheng Chengling, moved by the song, had numerous thoughts blooming inside him. As young as he was, he didn't think he had the courage to return to the Zhang regiment. He didn't think he had the courage to return to the Zhang residence in Jiangnan. The place that held his precious childhood memories. It must have been in a great state of ruin by now. A burden that he had to carry to the end of his life. Zhou Zishu's eyes narrowed as he fumbled for the wine pot around his hip. He took a big gulp with his head tilted backwards. Spiciness rushed straight up to his head and gagged him, making him shed a few tears. Those who knew me spoke of my sorrows, and those who did not said I was seeking something. This line was sung by Wen Kexing over and over, with a hint of self-deprecation. His eyes curved, as if he found it entertaining. What was he seeking? Really? After a good while, no one spoke. Wen Kexing's humming died down. Zhang Chengling was already asleep, body tilted to one side. The tree branch he took passing, now enveloped in his arms like a treasured sword. Something in his dreams made his lip curve up and his brow furrow profoundly. Zhou Zishu stood up, shedding his outer robes, using it to gently cover the child. That is adorable. His head hung low as he sighed. Your father's dazzling 18 patterns was said to have taken Jung-Hu by storm. Out of the 3 moves you taught the boy, none of them seemed to belong to the patterns. But when I thought about it, the 18 patterns and its ever-changing nature all originated from those 3 moves. What an excellent successor you are, Brother Wen, to have surpassed your father. Wen Kexing's voice also lowered when he replied calmly. His swordsmanship is definitely not as good as mine, but he was good in medicine where I completely suck at it. The most I can do is bandage wounds or battle a cold. This chapter is so sad. Then he turned to face Zhou Zishu. Since you possess such keen apprehension of the old man's sword skills, what else do you know? Zhou Zishu joined him by the fire. He pulled up his collar and hid half of his hands under the sleeves while warming himself up. He spoke slowly. In Jianghu, there is the elusive shaman Medicine Valley. I'm gonna need the man in the Mustang in the parking lot to chill the fuck out for a minute. In Jianghu, there was the elusive shaman Medicine Valley, whose medication is almost indistinguishable from poison, and vice versa. And there's also the divine Medicine Valley, whose practice is solely to help people. It's said that the latter is not well versed in martial arts. No one dare cross them. Your mother, Madame Gu, was the closed-door disciple of the Valley Master, and rumored to be the most beautiful woman when she was a maiden. Sometimes after there was news about her marriage, causing many hearts to break. Wen Kexing laughed softly at that, teasing, "How does a grown man like you know so much gossip? Do you have nothing better to do with your life?" Zhou Zishu smiled. "Not really. That's why you're hearing all this." The two went quiet for a brief moment. Wen Kexing then muttered, "All those stories from long ago." Perhaps they did share similarities, as when Zhou Zishu heard the other singing and sighing, he seemed to have understood something. He couldn't help but give a gentle reply, trying to be a little comforting. Your parents were some of the rare and good people in this world. They were a true match made in heaven, traveling across Jianghu together and retreating into seclusion together. Were I to live such a life, I wouldn't have any regrets, even if I have to die tomorrow. Wen Kexing's smile was terribly faint. Good people? Sorry, I got really distracted by what's going on outside. The wind is very strong, and I'm very worried about this tree. He looked almost dazed in the dead silence of night. Can't believe after that many years there's still someone who remembers them and calls them good. Say, what makes a good person? Why do humans have to be good? Zozishu was about to answer, then detected the signs of movement from Zhang Chengling. You're about to see my camera do some wild color changing. The boy seemed to be having trouble breathing before the pattern changed. Zozishu didn't have to look at him to know that he was startled awake by yet another nightmare. Zhang Chengling said nothing and merely curled in place, clutching at Zozishu's robes and the tree branch while listening to them. After that, Zozishu swallowed the words he was about to say. He thought it over carefully for a while, then replied in a neutral tone, "Not everyone in this world is a good person, but a majority of them tries to be so, to the point that they're willing to fake it." The dialogue is really good here. Yeah, it is. He paused for a bit before continuing. As for when they do, I think it's only because you are good to others will they treat you well in return. When you're good, you will have friends, acquaintances, families, people who want to be near you, to be nice to you. Think about it. Isn't it too miserable of a life if all you have is yourself and you treat everyone else with wariness? It's too painful, being a bad person. Wen Kexing was stunned listening to that. After a good while, he smiled and shook his head. Zozishu said no more about it and added more wood to the fire. Wen Kexing's head lowered, eyes gazing at the sparkling flame. He shook his head again, but more slowly. Finally, his arms crossed behind his head as he lay down, facing the bright starry night. A sigh was followed by words that were almost impossible to hear. Fair enough, Ashu. You're quite a reasonable man. Zozishu only smiled at that. Wen Kexing's next question sounded like he was talking to himself. Can a despicable man also be piteous? Of course, Zozishu answered. Wen Kexing nodded to himself, uncaring about Zozishu's possible scrutiny. He then gave a solemn comment. Ashu, I just realized, even though you may not be beautiful, you still suit my taste just fine. Zozishu's mouth twitched. He knew this man could never stay serious for long before reverting to his lecherous ways. He chose to ignore him. Wen Kexing propped himself up on one elbow, looking up to Zozishu, all smiling. Seeing that you adore my late parents that much, you should just follow me from now on. We can travel across Zhenghu together, then retreat to somewhere just like them. No need to be thinking about dying tomorrow. I don't mind being with you at all. What do you say? Zozishu's expression remained unchanged. Apologies, but I really don't deserve such appreciation from Brother Wen. Wen Kexing cackled in a degenerate fashion, enjoyed very much that Zozishu seemed terribly annoyed with him, to the point of breaking the wood fire stick in his hand, had resorted to the silent treatment, as there was no outlet to vent the frustration. He felt incredibly good about himself, having shamelessly delighted in other people's misery. The next morning, Zhang Chengling returned to robe Zozishu with a tiny voice. Thank you, Zozishu. Shifu. Zozishu took it and spared him a look. Come on, we're going back to the Gaos. Excuse me. Zhang Chengling stopped walking, then continued to follow him, like a scorned young bride. Wen Kushing ignored that and consoled him. Your Shifu seems to be pretty determined to mingle with those heroes and be in cahoots with them. He's still staying with the Gaos at the moment, so for now, you should just follow Sir Zhao. You can still look for him whenever you want. He quickly added, of course, you can always seek me out, too. Zhou Zishu spoke up while staying ahead of them. When did I ever say I want to mingle with those people? Wen Kushing rubs his chin, simpering. So you're not staying? Zhou Zishu frowned. Not staying. Wen Kushing threw Zhang Chengling a glance. For real? For real. Unprompted, Zhou Zishu looked at Zhang Chengling. The boy was staring at him unblinkingly, eyes familiar to that of a skittish rabbit, face showing restrained hope. The moment their eyes met, his lips thinned as he feigned seriousness. At a loss for words, Zhou Zishu merely grunted and kept walking. Wen Kushing, eager to add fuel to the fire, patted the boy's head and exclaimed, Hey Ashu, do you think we'd look like a family of 3? Zhou Zishu's steps quickened. It's giving Komi can't communicate. With a serious father-like charade, Wen Kushing said to Zhang Chengling gently, Since journey is long and there's nothing to do anyway, how about I tell you a story? Zhang Chengling nodded like the well-behaved child he was. Wen Kushing began smugly. Once upon a time, there was a demon child, living at the foot of Mount Wuxing with the other demons and ghosts. Of course, the child despised his kind, since all they did was cause troubles. He seemed to have a talent with storytelling. Ahead of them, Zhou Zishu heard Wen Kushing's melodic voice, rendering the foolish young boy absolutely awed. He became conscious of the fact that despicable Wen could very well be a traveling tale-teller. The red child knew he was an individual with exceptional heritage. His mother was a white snake spirit who was called the White Maiden. She had a love affair with a human, and when a monk named Fahai found out, he sealed her under Mount Hua. Zhou Zishu suddenly tripped over a stone and almost fell headfirst to the ground. The red child wanted to break the mountain apart to save his mother, but the monk asked for the immortals to help stop him. The child had the upper hand, but what he didn't anticipate was that the ghosts he lived with also betrayed him and wanted him dead. Zhou Zishu had nothing to comment at this point. Zhang Chengling was still rapt with attention. Why is that? Wen Kushing answered, Because there was a big secret. The snake spirit was actually not a spirit at all. She was a mere mortal with some cultivation in her. But somehow rumor got out, and she was treated like a demon and sealed under the mountain. Say, if she was ever released, then wouldn't her family all be normal people? Wouldn't the child just be an ordinary child then? Zhang Chengling listened to him dumbly. Mortal. I still don't understand. Wen Kushing laughed. Silly child, if you're of a different race, your heart will be different from us. Zhou Zishu startled, an idea vaguely forming in his head, and went away before he had the chance to delve further into it. He heard Zhang Chengling ask, Then did the red child die? Was the mountain destroyed? After thinking it over, Wen Kushing asked him back, I haven't thought of that part yet. What's your idea? Zhang Chengling's answer was absolute. Of course he defeated the demons, saved his mother, and became an invincible hero. Wen Kushing added, Maybe. But that's boring. Most versions ended that way, but What if the red child became an ordinary man from then on, no longer possessing his magical powers? Zhang Chengling odd. Zheng Chengling odd. Feeling this ending was somewhat pitiful, but couldn't explain why. He glanced at Wen Kexing, deciding that his senior was not as bad and having the urge to befriend him. He probed, "Will you tell me another story then?" Wen Kexing finally found a loyal listener, appreciated the boy's admiration. Consequently, he continued to ramble on from the tales of the owl and with the red water bowl to Zhang Ziya fighting the white bone spirit. I haven't watched that movie yet. I need to. To Sui, that one I actually don't know how to pronounce. Sui Ying Ying throwing her beauty trunk into the water out of rage, and so on. His strange and interesting tales lasted all the way to Dongting. Once the three arrived at Gao's manor, they ran into Xiao Wenning. Zhang Chengling's appearance surprised him, and he called out, "Oh dear, young master, where did you follow these two? Sir Xiao was driven half mad trying to find you." Zhou Jishu said, "We coincidentally found him running outside on his own, so we chased after him. We didn't have time to warn anyone beforehand, and Xiao Wenning tugged him inside before he could finish. You missed the big news. Come, quick, come inside. Everyone is a mess fighting each other right now." Drooping Millet from the Book of Odes, compiled by Vesuvius. Okay. Wen Kexing is purposely mixing up the legends to mess with Zhang Chengling. The tale of the red boy is separate from the tale of the white snake. I am familiar with the tale of the white snake, and okay, that's actually, yeah, I am familiar with the tale of the white snake. I am not a huge fan of the drama, though. Although I will say, the animated movie is class. To be honest, it's billed as a kid's movie, but it's not a kid's movie. There's definitely a fade to black sex scene in that movie. As a matter of fact, if you want to know anything about it, Saber Spark made a video about it. But it was on Netflix for a time. Alright. Una más. You know what? Actually, I am going to use the bathroom because I've had a lot of water. So, I am quite sure that I pulled a groin muscle. Because I did squats. So I haven't really been putting this on social media, at least not with people who aren't like my very close personal friends. But I am making a concerted effort to lose weight. And I have been, and I did squats. I'm starting doing weight training for the first time, and I did squats on Thursday, and I'm quite sure that, this pain is not just an overworked muscle. I think I just straight up pulled it. So, I will probably not be doing squats next week. I'll probably still be doing the rowing machine, though. I'll probably continue my other weight training and my cardio. Because I like to at least have an hour of cardio. I feel like sometimes if I don't exercise like that, like on a specific day, I feel like I can't concentrate. So right now, going to the gym is like a survival tactic. Chapter 24. Ghostface. Joji Shu had absolutely no interest in all of this. It would bother him even the slightest, even if they beat each other. It wouldn't bother him even the slightest if they beat each other to death. The only thing he wanted to do at the moment was to find a tavern to resupply his empty wine pot. Then, look for a place to sleep away the boy who broke the mountain to save the white snake tail he just heard. He gracefully slipped out of Xiao Wending's hold and explained, "How about we bring the kid back to Sir Jiao first?" Xiao Wending smacked his head. "Right, I almost forgot." The young man turned to Zhang Chengling, his perpetually transparent expression showing a strange sort of pity. He sighed and patted Zhang Chengling's shoulder. You have suffered too much for someone so young. Be careful next time, all right? Since he and the boy were not that acquainted, the younger just stood there ignorantly. Wen Kexing was quick to react as he cut in. What is it? Are these people still quarreling over the lapis armor? Are they being suspicious of the Shang family? He glanced at Zhang Chengling and stopped there. Xiao Wenning explained everything, since the trio weren't considered outsiders in his eyes. This is the worst time for all of you to be messing around out here. There was a big commotion yesterday. Everything exploded the moment Fang Xiaofeng mentioned the armor. So much that Sir Gao and Abbot Simu could barely contain the uproar. I'm guessing Abbot Simu is the equivalent of Shen Shen. Could barely contain the uproar. There were many who started to harbor other intentions toward it, like Yu Juifeng of the Patriarch of the Huashan sect, who was there first to question Sir Zhou about whether or not the latter had taken Zhang's piece of lapis for himself and caused his son's death. Now that does sound familiar. They're the Huashan is the pink tree sect from the show. After some thoughts, Xiao Wenning continued in a dull tone, like he was repeating the words from someone else. Yu Juifeng was crying and sniveling as if it was a funeral or something. As if it were a funeral or something. Yimei, Ting Kong Tong, and Kang Shan... There are a lot of names being thrown at me all at once right now. Yimei, Kong Tong, and Kang Chan Sex were all on good terms with Huashan, so they sided with Yu Zhifeng. Not only did they question about the murders that happened outside the Zhao holdings, the lot of Fang Zhaofeng also further fueled the fire, so a brawl started as a result. Some wanted Sir Gao to give an explanation for the ghost's sudden appearance in Jianghu, as well as what the lapis armor actually was. Wen Kexing and Zhou Zishu looked at Xiao Wenning with amusement. How did this slow-witted kid suddenly get so eloquent after just a day? Xiao Wenning coughed. Those were my words of my uncle master. As for the details of the quarrels, I don't really understand either. No wonder he said it that way. Wow, they were just complimenting him too. Zhou Zishu looked disdainful, having had enough of this foolishness. He ignored the boy and turned to Xiao Wenning. Oh wait, I skipped a sentence. No wonder he said it that way. Zhou Zishu suddenly said to Zhang Chengling, "Do you know anything, kid? Otherwise your room wouldn't have been set aflame and the scorpions wouldn't be out for your life." Zhang Chengling stared at him dumbly and shook his head. Time to throw in many sect names in this political struggle. Yeah. Honestly, this is starting to feel like the first chapter. This is starting to feel like the Fellowship Gathers chapter of Fellowship of the Ring, where they introduce everyone, including Boromir and his entire lineage. And it's a lot of names that have no bearing on the book, mind you. No bearing on the book whatsoever. Would it do a great service if... Do you happen to know anything, kid? Otherwise your room wouldn't have been set aflame and the scorpions wouldn't be out for your life. Zhang Chengling stared at him dumbly and shook his head. Zhou Zishu looked disdainful. Having had enough of this foolishness, he ignored the boy and turned to Xiao Wenning. It would do us a great service if Brother Xiao brings him back to Zhejiao. Then he immediately turned and walked away, having no interest in the current chaos. Zhang Chengling's eyes followed his figure, mouth pursed. All of a sudden, he felt a hand rubbing his hair. He looked up, and once saw Wen Kexing smiling. He said awkwardly, "Sir?" That is definitely a... Sir, this is a Wendy's. Why are you touching me? Wen Kexing said, "Do you know why he fakes all of his composure and elegance with other people and only shows his impatient side to you?" Zhang Chengling's head lowered as he mumbled, "Because I'm too dumb." Wen Kexing smiled. "No, you're only mildly stupid. Not that stupid. He doesn't wear a facade around you because he wants to befriend you. He just won't say it out loud because she's shy." Zhang Chengling was taken aback. "Really?" With his eyes narrowed in mirth, Wen Kexing stared at Zhou Zishu's back. He said unconcernedly, "His parents might be the ones who gave birth to him, but the one who knows him best is himself. Other than that, his soulmate is only me. So of course I'm not lying." The man's severe internal injuries, his disguise, his habit of disappearing out of the blue, his kung fu, his vast knowledge of Jianghu's matters inside out, except for Tianchuang, he had no other explanations. But if he really was from Tianchuang, how did he escape the punishment of those monstrous nails of 7 apertures for 3 autumns? Yeah, funny story about those. After a few days stuck with this puzzling question, Wen Kexing came to a revelation. The important thing here was not how he escaped them, but that he knew how to escape. Oh dear, I'm afraid of tagging along with a big shot, he thought. Before Zhang Chengling could fully take in what he meant, They heard a clueless Xiao Wenning lamented beside him. I always feel like you two being together is a little strange, considering that you're both men, but after today I finally understood. Being men or women has nothing to do with who's able to understand you with a few mere words. Someone who can complete you is like a pair of immortal soulmates. Xiao Wenning wants to be an ally. He wants to be an ally. He continued smugly. There's a poem that goes on as such. What is love, O world, that makes those birds swear bond till their death? The cherry blossom pond was thousands of miles deep, but can't be compared. He couldn't remember. I'm sure that was a haiku. I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be in like a specific syllabic formation. Didn't hit it though. He couldn't remember what it was that it couldn't compare to, and turned incredibly embarrassed. Since he tried his hardest but couldn't recall anything else, he said the rest under his breath and commented, "This poem by Sir Dufu, though somewhat hard to understand, is still a very moving piece." Wen Kexing forgets the song in the middle of the lyrics, sang Chengling, and Wen Kexing looked at him with odd expressions. Wen Kexing only replied after a good while. Qing Feng sect educates... That was Xiao Wenning, by the way. I got very confused. Qing Feng sect educates such well-rounded disciples. How admirable. Yeah, sorry, I didn't read that as Xiao Wenning. Xiao Wenning, modest as he was, smiled sheepishly at the praise. It's nothing. My master says that reading to people in Jianghu is pointless anyway, and there's no hope that anyone will ever pass the court official examination with flying colors. It's enough to know that a few words here and there, and it's important enough to know a few words here and there, and that one should focus on honing their kung fu instead. I only read a book or two. It's just my shallow understanding. Wen Kexing felt this shallow understanding was actually quite fascinating. The two brought Zheng Chengling back to Zhaojing, who had almost gone mad out of worry. The elder asked him anything and everything while Wen Kexing turned a blind eye. The old man might be a sly fox, but he did have concern for his late friend's son. He silently left, but the moment his back was facing them, he saw someone staring right at him. Wen Kexing stopped walking, and in that man's eyes, there was an insidious light glinting. That of a mad dog that was about to pounce. Wen Kexing saw Xiao Wenning greeting him respectfully, and knew that was his uncle master, the infamous ill-tempered Mo Huaikong of the Qing Feng sect. Mo Huaikong was listening to Xiao Wenning rambling and looked in the direction the young man was pointing at to face Wen Kexing. At first glance, he felt a sense of familiarity. Then those deep, dark eyes caused him a pinch of alarm. He couldn't understand why. In his astonishment, he saw Wen Kexing smile back at him. He grunted when Xiao Wenning started to describe how well acquainted he was with another man, sensing that this Wen Kexing was no good at all. He turned to Xiao Wenning. Will you stop already? Xiao Wenning swallowed the rest of his words, wishing he could sew his mouth shut. Don't yell at him! Oh, no! Oh, crap. Don't yell at him! Don't yell at our boy! He's trying his best, you bitch! And he's like, Uncle, and this complete stranger is gay! Isn't that nutty? Anyways. Only at nightfall did Zosie Shu finish his meals. He was leaning on the tavern's balcony rails, taking small sips of wine, when someone walked in and said something to the person sitting in the table next to him. Then, both paid for their food and left. Zosie Shu opened his eyes wider, and he realized that half the tavern was gone already. He pulled a random young man to his side and asked, "What happened?" "We just got news that Gao's Manor has successfully captured a ghost, and they're going to do a public execution." Zosie Shu's brows creased. Gao Chang had captured a ghost? At this moment, he no longer had doubts about the ghost's appearance. My gosh, the wind is just destroying things right now. I'm glad I didn't leave the trash can outside. I lost my place because I got distracted by the frankly troubling amounts of wind. Listen, I lived in hurricane zone for a long time. Strong wind freaks me out sometimes. But what was the Ghost Valley's intention for doing all of this? Those were the ones who had caused despicable crimes when they were living among others, and had to enter the valley to seek refuge. Wouldn't they be afraid of acting in broad daylight again? Was the lapis armor really hiding some kind of big secret, so terrible that it could lure even the ghosts out of the valley and make the well-spoken Sir Gao clam up to use such a stupid trick to divert people's attention? Still deep in his thoughts, Zosie Shu knocked into someone on his way downstairs. He murmured an apology, but once looking up, he was stunned. It was the disciple of Monk Gu with his otherworldly aura. There was a sudden thought popping up in his head. Even he has to consume rice after all? Monk Gu's disciple said, "It's nothing," and smoothed down his clothes. He took the initiative. I heard the young man from King Feng said that you were the one who escorted the Jiang's descendant to Taihu. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Ye Bai." He was not at all similar to Gao Chang, who was a much more sociable individual. Around him was an air of detachment from every mortal matter. Almost made him feel like he didn't exist. Not to mention, there was also a strange feeling of dissonance about him. Zosie Shu was surprised and puzzled that such a person would speak to him first, so he habitually resorted to empty pleasantries as replies. Ye Bai paid no mind to those, looking at him with indifference. His next sentence was, "I see that your breathing is stagnant and your movements are heavy. Whatever you're burdened with is now beyond cure. But how strange is it that someone like you can possess such vital spirit?" Zosie Shu fell silent. He felt this man must have cultivated his immortal aura in Mount Changming for so long that he no longer spoke the human way, just like his master. After some thoughts, Ye Bai inquired further. "How much time do you have left? 3 years? 2 years?" At this topic, Zosie Shu felt neither refusal nor acquiescence was the right answer. He smiled stiffly. "How keen-eyed you are, Brother Ye." No wonder. It was as if Ye Bai was wearing filtering nets on his ears as he shot down all of that nonsense. He didn't wait for Zosie Shu to finish replying. "Everyone who is near death will at least show some signs, and to have endured suffering beyond words. But you're still here indulging in luxuries, which shows that you definitely have some serious experience under your belt. Since when did such individuals emerge in our pugilist scene?" He turned and walked away, completely ignoring Zosie Shu. After after having left a great distance between them, he seemed to remember something and turned his head back toward the man behind him. "If you don't mind, treat me to some wine someday." As if doing that would be one of my greatest life achievements or something. Zozishu thought silently. He followed the majority of people to the Gao's manor, only to see what this legendary ghost was all about, and saw nothing but a middle-aged, fierce-looking man tied up in front of them. So this is what it felt like to watch a public execution. The ghost's upper body was naked intentionally to show the feral ghost face on his back, indicating that this one must be the real deal. While Zozishu was spacing out, a hand quietly landed on his shoulder. Wen Kuxing appeared out of nowhere, smiling at him sweetly. "I've looked for you all day. Where did you go?" Ignoring the question, Zozishu pointed to the man. "Do you think he's the real ghost or not?" Wen Kuxing looked at the direction he was pointing to, disagreeing. The ghost face indicates that one is no longer able to show face in broad daylight. Who would casually tattoo it on their back without reasons? Though, this unfortunate pal could also have caused offense to someone, and that person could have framed him and thrown him out here to execute publicly. His words were casual, but many things were revealed to Zozishu. Tattooing the ghost face required a special pigment from a plant called the nether plant, which only existed in the Ghost Valley. Furthermore, not everyone who entered in the Ghost Valley survived, just like not all spirits of the dead could reincarnate or turn into ghosts. They might very well suffer from being eradicated completely from this world. That place was an exclusively dog-eat-dog world, and you had to be vigilant of your surroundings to remain and earn yourself such a tattoo. Zozishu stared at the tattooed man pensively. At that moment, the tension was palpable among the crowd, and someone of the Huashan sect suggested burning this person alive. He suddenly turned away, making his way through the crowd, and left briskly. Ooh. So we finally meet Ye Bai. That's fun. I thought we were gonna meet him much earlier, to be honest. I need to make that into a meme. Uncle, have you heard of homosexuality? I need to make that into a meme. Or somebody needs to do it. Put it in the Discord. Maybe Photoshop an ally shirt on Xiao Wenning. It's almost Pride. It's almost that time. So while I'm here, that was all 6 chapters for the day. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. While I'm here, have any of you guys seen Our Flag Means Death? I've been thinking about doing that one. I don't have HBO Max, but I'm sure it's available somewhere. Because I love pirates. I'm not gonna lie. I really love pirates. Because I'm not gonna explain it. It's kind of a sad reason. I was thinking about doing Our Flag Means Death. Vox Machina is probably gonna be up on Wednesday. So, because I've already filmed Vox Machina. I just haven't finished editing it. So it's probably going to be up on Wednesday. I've seen it and I'd love to see your reaction. Cool. Okay. I love pirates. Like a lot. Vox Machina is going up. I'm really not sure if I want to do The Witcher. I'm just being honest. Like, I'm not super sure if it's my... I don't know. Oh, I still have taking a break up here. Yeah, Taika Waititi is definitely like the breath of fresh air a lot of movies needed. Like, just... I feel like he is what a lot of... I think he's what they needed, just specifically. Okay, well, while I'm here, would y'all... Oh, well, there it is. Would y'all like for me to read chapter 2 of my book? Let me find it. It's chapter 3. There's chapter 2. Because I would say I just finished editing this, but I haven't sent it to my critique partner, and my critique partner is my dad, so. See, I want to buy more candles, but the problem is I live in an apartment, and sometimes it's not a super great idea to have candles in apartments. I was doubly afraid because we used to have a cat. But, I just wanted, like, a single vanilla-scented candle, you know? But this entire apartment is carpeted. So. Alright, let me get some water in me, because this is 6 pages long. Alright. So, in the last chapter, a woman was murdered, and Corleone, the provincial governor, has to basically launch an investigation, although he's quite sure it's pretty open and shut, because it's very obvious that this woman, an outsider to the city, has killed a very well-known prominent figure in town. So, he thinks it's going to be pretty open shut. He's pretty much like, okay, yeah, we need to punish this person. And yeah, that's pretty much it. He had a discussion with his daughter, and he notes that his daughter is kind of acting a little strange. I'm probably literally seen over the middle book. Oh yeah, okay, cool. He notes that his daughter, who's not superhuman because she's adopted, who's not exactly human, she is adopted, and she's been acting a little strange. She's been asking a lot of strange questions, and it's concerning him. So. Marcellus's prison doesn't have a name. It's a small place made of stone, thick enough to keep minor criminals out for a few hours to a few months. It's all the way on the other side of town, but Cecil Marcellus walked here alone to collect his thoughts. A weaker part of him just wants to file the necessary paperwork to get this killer commuted to the capital. But what kind of lords would he and Corleone be if they just shoved their problems onto the king? Rain's health has already suffered enough, and they can't keep bothering their old friend with these kinds of matters. The Marcellus family is made of effective leaders, but of course that never stops the provincial council from calling their relationship to the royal family into question. Cecil stops pacing when he spots the chapel's cart rolling up. He gives a nod and wave to his sister-in-law and niece as he waits for Corleone to kiss his goodbyes. When his older brother finally joins them, he sucks his teeth. Hey, Cecil. One would expect Corleone to be the stern one, what with his towering height and one hand on his father's sword, but he's far too casual, even in the worst of times. Hey, yourself. Cecil replies with crossed arms. He gives his brother a once-over. Gods, Lucille just lets you walk around however you like, doesn't she? The question is rhetorical. Corleone lets his brother fuss over his crooked collar and brush the dust off of his black and gold overcoat. Per the traditions of their family, their coats are the same colors, but the patterns are different. They spent most of their lives just barely matching. Both their eyes and skin are pine bark brown. They both have their father's cheekbones. But Cecil is built for precision, whereas Corleone is built for brute force. According to their mother, their personalities don't match their bodies. Smooth your beard down when you scratch it. They even served side by side in the war, but unlike Corleone, Cecil could never grow out of the urge to stay bald and clean-shaven. If he's the one that has to look intimidating and official, then so be it. Let Corleone be the personable one. You're giving me too much credit. Corleone lets him get it out of his system. They're both more apprehensive than they'd like to admit. Has she said anything? No. Corleone pushes his glasses up his nose. We've checked for chronic say deprivation. And we found a little bit under her fingernails, but that's about it. He questioned war criminals, human traffickers, and killers during the Destal conflict, but something like this happening in their town, right under their noses, just feels fundamentally wrong. Destal Say was tainted by their machines. Even the capital was deprived of a steady supply, but Marcellus is pure. They took a horrendous beating during the hostilities, but thanks to Omadake Spring, the flow of Say has always been steady. Shall we? Cecil says, a bit calmer now. Corleone doesn't feel prepared, so he lets his brother lead the way. The prison might be silent, but it's quaking with fear. Their small collection of petty thieves and ruffians gaze at their lords pleadingly as they walk through the short corridor of cells. Having waited for them, Captain Bailey stands at attention, but the other guards are too afraid of the young woman behind the cell door to move. Their singular interrogation room isn't like the one Cecil used in wartime. There are no truth spells, no runes on the wall shining into the prisoner's eyes, or even a way for someone to listen in for threats. Cecil has to have faith in the latch holding the murderer's chains to the ground. Before they enter, he turns to Corleone. If her hands get free, act at will. Corleone gets the message. Cecil doesn't wait for the anxiety to sink in and unlocks the door. By all means, the middle-aged woman sitting at the table is I realized I just described her as a young woman, and then immediately said she was a middle-aged woman. I'll have to fix that later. By all means, the middle-aged woman sitting at the table is wholly unremarkable. Long black hair, pale skin tanned by work, casual posture, threadbare clothes. He could easily mistake her for an experienced ship hand, if not for her missing right arm. Normally, he would worry about her casting some sort of spell to compensate for it, but she's still chained to the chair, unable to reach anything. Cecil sits across the table, but Corleone stays standing. He rounds the room, standing directly behind her. He almost draws his sword, but there's no need to threaten her life. Yet. State your name, Cecil asks in Jibeni, trying to establish a rapport right off the bat. The killer's smirk unnerves him. Tan notwithstanding, the killer's pale skin is a stark difference to the dark brown tones of a typical Neondan. Her eyes are golden, just like Huan Chen's, their cultivator. She's clearly a Jibeni transplant. Perhaps this was just a robbery gone wrong. Travel to Jiben has been... Fuck me, dude. Travel to Jiben has been incredibly expensive since they started confiscating passports. Name, he repeats, Tiangong-er. That eliminates the possibility of aggression from the Shihadi war front, but it raises a whole host of other questions. Tiangong... Are you serious? Incredulity drips from Cecil's normally stern voice. Would I be here if I wasn't? Tian replies. Her voice is deep, maybe even gravelly compared to Tiangong-er's famously gentle voice. Cecil glances at Corleone, but then goes back to the parchment in front of him. Can I get that in writing? I would, but my good arm is otherwise occupied. Tian jerks her chains, and Corleone's hand races to his sword. Cecil gives him a cold stare and shakes his head. but it still takes him a moment to back down. Do you expect me to believe that you, a murderer, I might add, are Tiangong attendant to the Twin Saints? That a living legend is sitting right in front of us? I must say, you look remarkably young for a woman of 92. Cecil watches the smirk fall from her face. Sister Tiangong of Sichou. If you're going to mock me, do it properly. Tian bites her words, like she actually believes what she's saying. How dare you? Corleone seethes. His need for justice makes his fingers itch for his sword. He could cut her head off right now, but that wouldn't be proper justice for Major Belmont or the people of Marcellus. Sister Tian died in service of Corleone, Cecil warns. That's all Corleone needs to ground himself, and he unwinds his hand from his sword once more. Well, Sister Tian, pray tell what brings you here to our fair city, and to cause such a stir, no less. Cecil leans back in his chair and places his hands in front of him on the table, just to show that she doesn't scare him. Her arrogance has no place here. I was a crew member on a trade vessel called the Hellion. On an ill-advised trip to Outer Tepec, we were caught up in a naval skirmish. The Hellion was destroyed, and the surviving crew members were captured and separated. Those who were cleared of suspicion couldn't all leave Tepec at once. The rest were detained indefinitely and had their information confiscated. Looking thoroughly unimpressed, Cecil motions for her to continue. I made it here in exchange for work aboard a Neondan military vessel. How long did this take you? Cecil asks. About 4 months. Tian replies. Your capital, Eglis, is very disorganized. Your capital, Eglis, is very disorganized. Travel is almost untenably expensive. I'd hoped to find work here in Marcellus until one of the smaller ships came through to afford the trip home. Tian sits back as far as her chains will let her. She can't see the taller lord behind her, but she knows he's a man of action, earth and toil. People like him are always the easiest to fool. Unfortunately, his brother is not so easily convinced. That was all very well rehearsed. Cecil almost yawns. I'm almost impressed that you managed to come up with such a convincing lie. Because if you're actually Sister Tian, I'd say being dead for 10 years is enough time to come up with a more believable story. It's a good thing Cecil is here, because Corleone barely manages to stay calm. Rest assured, she will be brought to justice honorably. I'm just going to delete that sentence. Wow. Why don't you tell us why you're really here? I have Lady Marcellus's notes on the body. The former major's death was quick, but painful, as if sliced by a giant claw. Witnesses say they saw a large shadow, then blood. Hardly an appropriate spell to compensate for your missing arm. Cecil leans forward. The room goes cold. If you're attempting to impede the flow of say in this province, you will die for it. Cecil hasn't been an inquisitor for a long time, but it's almost too easy to slip back into it. Cold-blooded killers and flesh merchants once cowered to such murderous intent. Sister Tian's imposter only scoffs in response. Your say meridians aren't exactly as steady as you'd like to believe. That catches the lords off guard. She takes their stunned silence as permission to continue. But I'm not causing it. All I've been doing is trying to get to Jiben. My vessel was scuppered off the coast of Tepec, but that was some time ago. She lets the truth wash over them, just for dramatic effect. The man behind her is frozen in thought. She has her hooks in him. I was looking for work when a great big hole right in the middle of your... I was looking for work when I felt it. A great big hole right in the middle of your sleepy little town. That's not possible. Say is like a river. It flows. There are no holes. You don't disrupt the flow of a river without changing an entire ecosystem. We would notice if something was wrong. I would think a famous cultivator would know. Cecil's apparent disinterest hooks her right back. I was never a cultivator, Tian shoots back. Just a nun. Regardless, there hasn't been a case of shock in the last 5 years, Cecil says, but the conviction in his voice hangs in the air. There's a long, deadly pause. Lord Cecil clearly expects his brother to corroborate his claims, but receives nothing but silence in response. His stern demeanor breaks, revealing a young man who, after all this time, still depends on his older brother for reassurance. Corleone. Now I know you still have a handful of saints in Marcellus. Maybe some of them have been acting strangely. She watches her interrogator watch his brother, whose wheels are turning so loudly she practically hears them grind on his cobblestone brain. She pushes a little harder, taking a stab in the dark. Or maybe you have a cultivator who hasn't been feeling well lately. Our cultivator's condition is of no concern. Cecil's interrupted by Corleone wrenching Tian's chair back so she can face him. Where? It's not a question. This can't be a coincidence. All of Lily's questions, Huan Chen not feeling well enough to greet them, the letter he received from his mother this morning, all of it falls a little too perfectly into place for her to be lying or guessing. He should have known it was unusual for Lily to ask those questions about something so long ago. With news of Lucille's pregnancy, she had the chance to be an actual child. She has a garden. She watches Lucille cook. She's so at peace that he forgets she's not a human child. She's part of the earth. Everything she does reflects its pain. Nyanda's war is over. His war is over. He will not suffer a single case of shock in this town. Not where his brother, wife, and children sleep. Tell me. I was headed to the north before she tried to stop me. She hardly blinks in the face of Corleone's fury. I was told the road I was on was a straight shot to her house. Corleone doesn't need to hear any more. Bailey! Corleone shouts for the captain as he dashes out of the room, leaving Cecil to scramble to his feet to chase after him. Wait. Tian's voice stops him before he gets to the door Corleone slammed shut. The older brother might have left in a panic, but if the younger lord is truly as smart as she thinks he is, he'll stay. Reluctantly, Cecil lets go of the door, praying that Corleone keeps a cool head. He wills him to think of Lucille and everyone around him. He can't cause panic off of pure conjecture. Cecil has seen a lot of liars in his time. Some of them think that they can bargain. Others even beg and cry. This woman not only believes she's the late Tiangong-er. This woman not only believes she's the late Tiangong-er. She might act aloof, but she got caught on purpose to warn them. Why else would she have demanded to speak with someone in charge? So that means whatever enemy she's searching for is beyond her. To his shame, he would never have believed her if she had petitioned him like a regular citizen. Come here. I want to show you something. Tian nods him over. She's not surprised when he doesn't budge. He's smarter than his brother. Look at my right shoulder. Cecil approaches her like he would a rabid animal. He's not armed, but his cold hands sting her skin as he gingerly moves her collar to the side. The symbol burnt into her shoulders is the seal of Shihai's is the seal in the middle of Shihai's flag. Two symmetrical prongs, piercing a circle through its middle, emphasizing the separation between two energies. The last time he saw this horrid thing was on the back of Huan Chen's hand. The cultivator hastily hid it behind a glove and has worn them ever since. However, Tian's brand must have been a botched job. It's misshapen by extensive scarring. They stretch and fold beyond sight where her arm used to be. Judging by the mottled discoloration, she lost it to infection. You were in the Winchester trials. Cecil won't let sympathy pains cloud his judgment. Inspect the body again. You'll find that mark on it. That body isn't your Major Belmont. If I had to guess, the original has been dead for quite some time. Tian doesn't acknowledge this remark about the Winchesters. Tian doesn't acknowledge his remark about the Winchesters. What does that mean? Do you know what's coming? Cecil leans forward on the table, and Tian leans back, like she's aiming for him. That creature wasn't human. They call it a demon. The opposite of a saint. Tian lets Lord Cecil put the pieces together. She has no reason to help these people. She could have let that demon have its way, doing whatever mission it was sent to do. But that's not the ideal course of action. She must guarantee her survival. If left alone, this entire town could turn into demons, just like Major Belmont. She can't fight them all by herself. You've seen what happens to the sky when the flow of Say is interrupted, right? I served in Destal. I've seen it, Cecil hisses. Then imagine what could happen to animals and people. I've seen skies turn black and red, beloved pets turn into monsters, and corpses drag themselves along the ground as if they'd been brought back to life. She didn't expect him to believe her at first, but he's hanging on to her every word. It practically happened nightly in Shihai, but I've seen it in Zaragoza, Tepec, and even Jiben. Shocked, Cecil rights himself, standing rigidly. Say fluctuations in Jiben make no sense. It's holy land, where saints are born and cared for. Their spells can be more powerful than nature itself. If you're not careful, this town is next on that list. You have no proof. There's the disbelief. All you have is my word. Tian wants to lean back and put her hand behind her head like she's at the beach, but in chains, there's not much she can do but smirk. Nobles are so easy to manipulate. This is what happens when humans get an inflated ego. She wonders what would have happened if she had sent one of those petitions instead. This province would be sucked dry of Say in little more than a month, maybe sooner at the rate it's disappearing. You should check on your brother. Cecil grits his teeth for a minute. It looks like he's actually going to kill her. But she knows it's only because she's right. Growling, he turns on his heel and throws the door open. A guard stumbles in and tries not to act like he didn't have his ear pressed against the door. If she so much as rattles those chains, kill her, Cecil demands before tearing out of the room. The guard doesn't get a chance to respond, but when he looks at Tian, she rolls her eyes. He scurries out of the room. She hears him drag something across the floor and push it against the door. All it takes is one night to upend someone's life. It could either be tonight or weeks from now. But this town, like so many others, will change. What humanity is left in her sympathizes. Both lords must be frustrated and confused. That will lead to mistakes. Costly ones. When the mistakes cost too great, this town will tear itself apart with fear and distrust, and the Say will only get lower and lower. She's done quite well. She's done quite well, considering this day hasn't gone to plan. When she went to investigate the growing hole, she didn't expect someone wanting to investigate her. Bloodlust got to her before common sense did. She dealt with the other demons swiftly, but ended up getting caught. She estimates that the brothers will be back tonight with guards and more questions. She could make them chase her, then kill them all. But she needs to make it to Gibbon alive, not hunted. These chains can't hold her. Deep down, the Lord of Marcellus knows this. Deep down, the Lords of Marcellus know this. Be smart, stay alive. The only thing that holds her back is need. I'm actually going to delete this last sentence. Alright, so, yeah. That is the introduction of the character, Tian Gong-er, who, eventually becomes something of an asset, but never misses a chance to roast the fuck out of Corleone. Which, Corleone needs to be roasted. He needs to be humbled. But it's already 4 o'clock. I've been at this for 3 hours. Man, oh man. Alright. So, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I will most likely be streaming next Friday. Okay. I will most likely be streaming next Friday. You know, if there are any other books y'all want me to read, y'all need to let me know. Let me know, because I would like to do this for more than just Faraway Wanderers. But yeah, the next stream is on the 13th. And I will probably continue doing it regularly until I finish the book. And like I said, if there's anything else y'all want me to read, I can. If there's anybody left in chat, let me know. But yeah, let's turn some music back on. As much as I like the noisemakers, the same 3 notes can get quite annoying sometimes. Let's see. There we go. Scum villain. Okay. Scum villain saving system. I can work with that. Okay, is the music no longer working or something? It's not. Whoops. There we go. Alright, perfect. Scum villain saving system? Okay, I can do scum villain saving system. I heard that it's long, though, and it's a little bit sexy. So, that might be Twitch or even like a Patreon-only stream. We'll see. But, yeah, so, let's do some housekeeping. I'm sorry I've been gone for so long. It was not intentional. It really wasn't. Next week is probably going to be the premiere of Vox Machina. And then, Nirvana and Fire to follow. I am currently looking for a 3rd series, and that 3rd series is probably going to be Our Flag Means Death. Will probably be Our Flag Means Death, but you know, we'll see. What else? Oh, the rewatches will also, the Patreon rewatches will also be starting this month. So that's looking to be 8 novels in English? Oh my god. What was I about to say? The rewatches. The Patreon rewatches will also be going up this month. And This month we are doing The Untamed, specifically. Now, I'll load up clips on YouTube here and there, but the only way you will find the entire full episode reaction will be on Patreon. But like I said, once again, you will find clips on YouTube. And I'm going to be doing the rewatches quite a bit differently than I do the reaction series. So the rewatches, I will most likely only be uploading onto YouTube once a month, and it'll be extremely abbreviated. Like, it'll be a brief introduction and just a montage of clips, kind of like what I do on TikTok. It'll be a brief introduction, a montage of clips, and then a brief outro, and that's it. I'm not going to do it on the same level I do all the reactions that I post on here, and I'm not going to do it on the same level, and I'm not going to give it the same amount of analysis, frankly, because I've already analyzed The Untamed up, left, right, and center. As you can see, I have 2 videos that are doing just that same thing. So I will most likely be watching the Untamed drama on Patreon, and you won't see any clips from that until the 30th. And it'll be a Monday video. So, it'll be fun. But yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I've really been wanting to make some pastries based off of stuff like The Untamed and Faraway Wanderers, but a lot of the flavors that I want to do, especially where the Wei Wuxian cupcakes that I had for an idea as an idea go, those ingredients are inaccessible to me. It is very, very difficult to get a lot of Asian ingredients where I live, which blows my mind because there's an H Mart not 45 minutes away from me, but it's like never open. So, yeah. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But, regardless, I think that is me done for the day. For those of you who do celebrate the holiday weekend, happy Mother's Day. For those of you who are struggling a little bit this week because of the holiday, my thoughts are with you. Please take care of yourself this weekend. And yeah, I hope you're all safe, healthy, happy. And without further ado, thank you for watching. Stay weird, lovelies, and happy eating.